Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see you all here. We're here to put forward our argument for a no vote to the Fiscal Treaty. And you've probably heard, you probably know the people concerned here. We have Thomas Pringle, who you all know. We have James Reynolds, and we have Anthony Cotton. And in order to push forward on time, and we have Mr. Ming Flanagan. My name is That's what you call time.
No, it isn't.
So, in order that we push on, I'd like to ask Tom Pringle here to say a few words because he has to move on very quickly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much. Fortunately, I have to rush back over to the Dáil. I have to due to speak on an item over there very quickly, shortly. I'd just like to thank the farmers' representatives for the invitation here today to address this press conference on what I think is a very important issue. And the government continuously holds up the farming sector as the way that's going to grow our economy and lead our recovery through the increase in production and output. And it's very clear, I think, from the leaflet here and the banners at the back, that the passing of this Fiscal Compact Treaty on the 31st of May, if it is passed, will have very serious implications right across the whole economy and also in the farming sector, because it enshrines the fiscal austerity into our national legislation and into our constitution, and will severely hamper the government's ability to have any growth measures or develop any growth measures in the future. And particularly when we're looking and relying on the farming sector and other industries to lead us out of this recovery, the inability to stimulate growth and to have a growth compact as such in the future will be very difficult for us to continue on with. And I pay tribute to the farmers for coming together and calling for a no vote, as we see all measures of the establishment, from GAA county managers to the IFA to every other body, coming out and calling for a yes vote. And I think it's important that we do hear from representative groups like this and strengthening the call for a no vote on May the 31st. And contrary to popular opinion and to what the government is spouting, the sky won't fall on our heads if we vote no on May the 31st. Things will continue on and the country will survive afterwards, and we will retain some flexibility and some ability to retain the control over our national finances and to be able to use those finances for the good of all the citizens of the country and not for the good of saving the financial institutions of Europe. Thank you.
Now, maybe Flanagan might like to...
Yeah. First of all, I just want to congratulate this group for coming together, because all I can say is, having spoken to many farmers around my constituency, they are not happy with this treaty. Yet, at the same time, we have the main representative, well, they call themselves the representative group of the farmers, the IFA, coming out hook, line and sinker saying vote yes for this. So I think for that reason alone, it is vital that there is an actual coordinated group that is leading farmers down the right road, as opposed to the road that the IFA and other farmers groups have led farmers in the past. Apparently it was going to be a wonderful thing what Europe was going to do for us in farming, and really, what have they done? They have driven the small person off their land, and they are slowly but surely moving towards a situation where we'll have nothing but ranches owned by multinationals in this country. And I think the more that this group gets into the media and spreads the word that the main farming groups do not necessarily represent farming opinion on this one, the better, because it is essential that we vote no to this fiscal compact. One of the main reasons why I would personally be voting against it is the fact that we're told that these new rules will solve everything. But we know what Germany thinks of rules. They had rules under Maastricht and they did not stick to them. When the going gets tough for them, they will make up their own rules. We talk about oh, well, look at, in this case, there will be a fine if they don't stick to the rules. Look at, they are so big that if it comes to that situation in the future, they change the rules again, because they make the rules to suit themselves, and they certainly don't make the rules to suit us, whether that be a farmer, whether that be a block layer, whether that be a teacher or anyone. And I think it's brilliant to see now that the farmers have an actual focus for voting no.
Thank you very much, Ming. Now maybe James Reynolds, maybe you'd like to give the full views.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. And thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Deputies Ming Flanagan and Thomas Pringle, for honouring us with their presence at this important launch. And thank you to ladies and gentlemen of the media. I might say, as a preface to my remarks, by saying that this is an ad hoc farmers group of necessity. We are not a rival farmers organisation. It would be an outlandish claim for us to make such a claim. And the necessity is because the main farmer organisations, as Ming has rightly said, like the IFA and the ICMSA, did not discuss or debate this issue, very important issue that's going to impact on the future of this country's freedom, the future of this country's economy, and the impact on the future of farm families in this country and throughout Europe. And that this important issue has not been debated. I agree with Andy Kenny on one issue. This issue is more important than the general election. And yet, there haven't been public meetings for the farming community organised by the IFA or ICMSA where people with a contrary view could put forward the case for a no vote. It was a rushed decision, rushed because people in the European Commission and with the Agriculture Minister's Office pushed the leadership of the two main organisations to come out strongly with a yes vote, with a vague promise in return that they get some concessions in relation to CAP reform post 2013. As you're aware, Simon Coveney takes over the presidency of the Agriculture Ministers of the EU from January of 2013, and it was more the motivation of the main organisations was more motivated by a desire to please the minister than to actually put forward a proper case and obtain guarantees, cast iron guarantees, in relation to the CAP budget post-2013, which is under threat by the ratification of the Fiscal Treaty. Professor Alan Matthews, who is an expert in European agricultural policy, put a paper out. It was published in the December 15th issue of the Irish Examiner, which he stated that the CAP budget is in peril if the Fiscal Compact is ratified, because the 700 billion firewall fund that's going to be established, supposedly established to provide rescue funds for this country, Greece, Portugal, Spain and other countries, is an enormous fund. Money is scarce in the EU at the moment. We're in the middle of a European debt crisis, and that CAP budget is worth annually 46 billion euro, which is a very, very attractive pot that the EU could dip into for the purposes of funding the ESM. Also, austerity, as Ming as rightly pointed out, austerity is killing demand in this country. It's destroying, and we not only have you as austerity in Ireland, you have austerity throughout Europe. Austerity, we as a small nation and the agricultural community export up to 90% of what we produce in terms of agricultural produce. We need export markets. Austerity is going to kill our export markets on the continent, because if people are hungry, and I think one thing that must be highlighted here, I've seen on the news yesterday that we're supposed to be good Europeans. There are fellow Europeans, Greek citizens, who are hungry and who are have to go to soup kitchens because of the condition that they have been brought to, because of the policies of the EU in bailing out bust banks and bailing out bondholders who gambled and instead of taking the loss that they deserve to take, expect the Irish and European taxpayers to bail them out, and the taxpayers of the poorest countries in Europe to bail them out. And I want to say one thing in in relation to our case against the Fiscal Compact Treaty. Because farmers have farm spouses, they have children going to college. Many of them have are lucky enough have off-farm employment. So we are part of the wider economy. We are impacted by austerity. We are impacted by the threatened cuts that are going to happen if we ratify this fiscal treaty. And there is in my opinion, there is a false debate going around, centering around what will happen if we say no on May the 31st in terms of the provision of emergency funding, ESM funding, to this country, when the current ESF funding, which is overseen by the Troika, runs out at the end of next year. And it is our contention that this referendum should be an Icelandic-type referendum on bank debt, and that the Irish people, in voting no on May the 31st, that no vote should be a mandate for this country to default on the bank debt that has forced us into an emergency programme involving the IMF in the first place. Colin McCarthy wrote in the 18th of March that it was the loading of the bank debt on top of the sovereign debt that pushed us, as he termed it, into the red zone. In other words, we would be in a position today to sell Irish government bonds on the financial markets today, were it not for the fact that the bank debt was loaded onto the sovereign debt. And why are the Irish people being asked to accept austerity when the bankers, the European banks and the bondholders are not prepared to accept austerity? Why is it a situation where Greece, and rightfully so, got a 50% write-down in their bank debt, and we received no write-down in our bank debt? And yet, the government and the people on the yes side are trying to scaremonger the Irish public into a situation where they will be herded like sheep into voting yes for something that is not in their best interest.
Thank you, James. A couple of things there, we should not surrender what is left of our sovereignty. And we shouldn't let the Franco-German takeover system, if you like, come into us. And literally, we say no both to the long term and the short term. If we examine it a little bit closer, we find that Germany is doing very well with the value of the euro the way it is at 130, 140. Whereas if the mark was on its own, it would probably be about €2. So that they're selling their produce and they're able to compete against both USA and China at 2/3 the price that it would be if they were running the market. Now, this, therefore, it's in their interest to keep the euro at about that value. And in order to do this, they can keep us just on the margin, keep our austerity budget in so that we can't get our employment, get our productive side of it going. And so we'll be on the breadline. And therefore that'll keep the euro where it is. So they're very happy. And when we look at it, they're going to do now with the banks what they couldn't do with the tanks. And by God, we should stop them doing it. And if we look, and I asked this at a very big meeting there recently, if we are going to, by 2015, our GDP to debt ratio will be about 120%, right? We have to bring that down to 60% in 20 years, which would mean, as far as I can see, making about 7 billion a year of a difference. There are various ways you can do it, but we haven't been very successful even on 4 at the moment. And if we were to do that for 20 years, we wouldn't have much of a country left. So that we will not be able to make it. We're signing up to something I feel we will not be able to deliver on. Now, if we do that, is there any? And Germany is in control of our budget. Can they not turn around and say, look, you're due this cap payment. We're going to hold on to it to pay off your debt here. And now nobody's been able to answer that question. So if that did happen, all the supports for farming and everything, and as Tom said here, agriculture is the base way out. That is our big thing, our natural resource. We can get it going, and it certainly will help, but we have to give it a chance to get going. It needs money, it needs this and that and the other. Now, if our money, even the support's going to be taken away. Now, we're also being asked to go and vote in for a fund that isn't there yet. It's not there. So, I mean, are they not doing things the wrong way around? Let's have the fund there and then talk about it. But no, the fund is not there. And by right, we need another referendum to put that in. So I don't know really what way they're going about it. I just throw these few points out to you there, they're trying to frighten us into the situation. And with those few remarks, maybe Anthony, you'd come in now and make a few points there on the legal side of the situation.
Well, thank you. I'm not a farmer, but I'm of good farming stock. It seems to me that, as Shane Ross was pointing out very eloquently on the Pat Kenny show this morning, this referendum should have been postponed, of course. But seeing it can't be postponed by the government, it makes every sense for the people to vote no to it. They can always rerun it if need be. This was done with Nice and with Lisbon. And if there's something terribly urgent down the road that requires us to pass this treaty, we'll let them rerun the treaty. But it would make absolutely no sense for us to vote yes to a fiscal compact when the political and economic surround to it has of course been changed dramatically by Hollande's victory in France and by the German government's decision to put off ratification of the fiscal treaty for 2 months. So they're talking about some kind of growth pact in the meantime. Well, let us see what to counterbalance the austerity features of the fiscal treaty. So it makes every sense there for people to vote no, if only on those grounds. Let's see what's on offer down the road. But more fundamentally, the main argument by the yes side of this referendum is that we need to vote yes in order to have access to this European Stability Mechanism Fund, the permanent bailout fund for the Eurozone, 700 billion possibly, which is coming into force later this year. Well, this fund does not yet exist. It depends upon the ESM treaty from which it comes being ratified. That treaty has not yet been ratified. It hasn't yet been ratified by Ireland. Immediately after the May the 31st referendum, the government will be bringing in before the Dáil the ESM treaty, under which we're expected to contribute some 1.3 billion in down payments over the next 2 years, beginning in July with 250 million, to be followed in October by another 250 million, to be followed next year by 500 million. Altogether 1.3 billion in the next 2 years towards this fund, which which people think is going to be a pot of gold, which we need access to. And moreover, and the most fundamental point, and I don't want to take too much time, is that there's a big legal question mark over this treaty. It depends upon an authorization from the European Union as a whole. All 27 EU states have decided, their governments have decided, to amend the EU treaties to allow the stability mechanism to be set up. This amendment, Article 136 of the Function of the Union Treaty, it doesn't come into force until January next. It has no legal force until January the 1st next. And yet they want to bring into being the ESM in July. This is profoundly illegal. The second point is that the Article 136 amendment, which allows an ESM to be set up, a permanent bailout fund, says that shall be done by the member states of the Eurozone, implying all 17 member states of the Eurozone. It says the member states may set up a stability mechanism. It doesn't say some member states or member states, it says the member states, all of them. And yet the ESM fund, which is set out, we would write the ESM treaty, can come into force once 8 member states ratify the ESM treaty, because it says the ESM fund can be set up once the states providing 90% of the capital have ratified it. Well, if the 8 biggest states provide 90% of the capital, the 8 Eurozone states can bring the ESM treaty into force. That is not compatible with the Article 136 authorization of this treaty, which says the member states, implicitly all of them. So there's a whole lot of legal issues relating to the ESM treaty and relating to the Article 136 amendment to the main EU treaties which authorise it and which should be dealt with before the Irish people decide to tie this permanent debt break and permanent balanced budget provision around their necks in order to have access to this fund, which, as the chairman says, doesn't exist, is legally dubious, is something on which we almost certainly will have to have a referendum on, because this case is likely to come up in the courts if the government hasn't the gumption to have a referendum on it. And if we did have a referendum on it, it would put us in a powerful bargaining position vis-à-vis the Eurozone to exact real relief on our national debts. Because that's the only way we can have access to real money, by having a referendum on the permanent bailout fund on which we have an effective veto that needs to be recognised and used as a bargaining tool by this bargaining instrument by this government in order to get real relief on our debts. And that issue is going to be brought before the Dáil in June, requiring us to spend 250 million in July, yet most people are quite unaware of this.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I think you see why I call it the Fiscal Treaty. But no, I did hear another point there, that all the doors are open now, and you know, we want to keep the doors open. But look, we've got absolutely nothing with the doors open. So what difference does it make? So, you know, I think there are a lot of points, I think, that Anthony and Tom and Winnie and James have brought up. And so I'd like to open it for questions along the line, because I'm sure you have a few of them.
James, you say in this leaflet here that a backing of the treaty could put the cap budget at severe risk, and also has the possibility of leading the farming sector down the same road as the sugar beet and fishing industries.
Can we see where they've gone?
How so? What's in the treaty that would cause these two issues?
It's because, as Anthony Coughlin and Tom Spring has said earlier, in relation to the fiscal treaty, we are being told is being coupled with the ESM treaty, because we're told that we are, and again this bogus argument we both know, we're deprived of ESM emergency funding when the current programme runs out at the end of next year. The situation is in relation to the that ESM fund, as I said earlier, 700 billion euros. Where does that 700 billion come from? The cap is worth annually 46 billion. Over a 5-year period, that's in excess of 200 billion. There is a concept in the current single farm payment regime called modulation. That means that single farm payments are cut every year by up to 12%, starting with a 3% with the introduction of the single payment in 2005, and then gradually on a scale increasing. You can see a situation whereby, and this is I believe what Professor Matthews is referring to, where we would have one giant for modulation cut of 30-40%, because the money at the moment we are the cap, Ireland's share of the cap is worth approximately 1.6 billion, but about 1.3 billion is going to the single farm payment in terms of single farm payment. And then there are other schemes that are co-financed, like the disadvantaged areas scheme, and there was a REP scheme that was co-financed as well from Brussels. But the lion's share of that money is which is 1.3 billion, is earmarked for the single farm payment. If the cap budget was targeted by the ESM funding, you could have a situation where Ireland, instead of drawing down 1.6 billion, would be lucky to draw down 1 billion, and that would have a huge impact in relation to it, because 90% of farmers in the Republic, up to 90% of farmers have a single farm payment of less than 10,000, and despite notwithstanding the situation that farm gate prices have greatly improved, vastly improved in the last couple of years. There's been a 25% markup in farm gate prices, but at the same time, the costs of production have rapidly increased as well. So the cost of production are almost outstripping the gains in terms of farm gate prices. So most farmers are still very dependent on that single farm payment to stay in farming, to stay viable in farming. and most farmers, if you ask them, and David would agree with me on this, would prefer that we didn't receive any subsidies from the taxpayer, that we were independently profitable, and that the farm gate price that we will receive for our produce would be able to cover the cost of production and make a profit like any other business. That's what, but the European Union has put us on this, as creating a dependency culture, that we're almost welfare dependent at this stage on this common agricultural policy. So therefore, farmers are in the front line. Of all citizens in this country, farmers depend on Europe, on the EU, for their income. We have the cap. The cap is, most EU funds coming into this country directly are in the form of the cap. If the cap is targeted for the ESM budget, we're screwed.
Can I just ask you about, you were having putting out effectively at the ICMSA and the IFA. Are you saying that they?
No, I'm a member. I'm a member of the IFA, and David is vice chairman of Limerick IFA.
Okay.
But
why then are you at odds? Are you saying that?
I'm saying internal. I'm saying internal. We're saying what Eamon O'Keefe had in the bottle to do. We are prepared to actually stand out and defy our own organisations and accept the consequences. We're not going to say we can achieve more by staying within. We're saying that, look, there comes a time when you have to part company. There comes a time when you have to make a stand. The IFA leadership, the IFA membership and leadership are two different things. And it's and again, I coin the phrase, it's the IFA hierarchy, not listening to what the ordinary members of the organisation, which is and we're a broad church, are saying. And we certainly weren't given an opportunity to put forward the alternative case. And as I said to you, anything that's in that leaflet is backed up by facts. Professor Alan Matthews of Trinity put forward that case. He also said that austerity will kill our export market, because we're selling our lambs into France. We're 60% of our beef exports are into the UK market, which isn't part of the Eurozone. But we still export a lot of most of our 85% of our what we produce in terms of food products, and we depend on the consumers of Europe being in a position to pay for and buy our produce at reasonable cost. What do we want? And a new EU intervention scheme that would put European food into cold storage, because the consumers of Europe can't afford to eat it, because even though the people of Hungary or the people of Greece are going hungry, but they can't do it because they have to meet impossible commitments in terms of mortgage repayments, impossible commitments in terms of increasing taxes and stealth charges and cuts in terms of their income and their public service salaries.
I think just to add to that, the farming people haven't been given the full facts, and maybe most of the people in the country haven't been given the full facts. I mean, for instance, James has run through a few of the things there, the actual farming side of it. But you look at the ESM treaty, that requires us to pay 11 billion into it over a period of time, and that's unconditionally and irrevocably set into the things. And this may be increased by what? We don't know. And by unseen people, and at what interest? We don't know. Now there's a whole lot of questions there. And if we go on this austerity line that we're taking, we've shown it hasn't worked. It will drive us down, and we're told that agriculture, that the milk side should increase by 50%, and the dairy side 50%. Where's the money going to come from that? I know that they're talking about lending, and I met the Minister for Finance and the new man in charge of the Department of Finance only recently, and this thing came up a lot on the credit to the farming community, because we have to have the input to be able to create the produce that creates the employment and therefore the exports. And we're extremely concerned over what the banks are saying. Now, I know of one case where a bank needed 5 times the amount of money in land assets before they lended in money. Well, that sort of thing, you can't come up with that sort of thing. And there were very tight controls on it, so that if he didn't deliver, he'd lose his land. Oh, but this sort of thing, we've got to get out of it. And if we see, as Anthony Cochran has said there, the illegality at the moment of the situation, that fund that we think is a pot of gold, we're being frightened into voting yes, because that is what we have to have. And the Minister then, having said that it was ludicrous to think of a second bailout, he turns around and said, I give you a rough budget, if you don't vote yes. Now, we're going to get a rough budget anyway, because look, we're in an awful mess, and the government and the previous government haven't come out and told us the facts. And if I tell you, I mean, I asked a question there to Anthony Coughlin, if I may just say, that it cost the country 50 billion to be run, and we were getting in 32, and we were borrowing 18, and that 18 cost us 10, so effectively it's 22 against 50. And we're told in 3 more years, taking out 4 million, we're going to be grand. My maths doesn't add up. And I asked, what's wrong? And he said, oh, well, it costs more than that to run the country.